Capcom is absolutely cooking right now with the Resident Evil franchise, with Resident Evil 9 finally out and quickly becoming one of the best games in the entire series. Fans are already asking for more. And honestly, it's easy to see why. Capcom currently has multiple Resident Evil projects in development, including new remakes, future mainline entries, and of course the highly anticipated Resident Evil 9 story expansion. Today, we're gonna break down the full roadmap of upcoming Resident Evil games based on insider information, leaks, and official statements from developers. So if you're a Resident Evil fan, there's a lot to look forward to in the coming years. Let's start with the most immediate project, the Resident Evil 9 DLC. The director of Resident Evil 9 has officially confirmed that a story expansion for the game is currently in development. This is huge news because Resident Evil 9 already delivered an incredible story, but there are still many unanswered questions. According to several insiders, Capcom is actually working on 2 story expansions for Resident Evil 9. The first expansion is expected to release sometime in 2026. This DLC will reportedly focus heavily on Leon Kennedy and expand the story surrounding the events of Requiem. If this turns out to be true, we could finally get more details about several important characters. One of the biggest mysteries involves Albert Wesker and the character known as Xeno. According to leaks, Xeno is believed to be a clone or mutation connected to Wesker's DNA. That alone opens up a lot of possibilities for the future of the series. The DLC may also finally explain what happened to Chris Redfield. In Resident Evil 9, Chris is somehow connected to the events of the game, but the story never fully reveals where he is or what he's doing. Even Leon himself doesn't seem to know Chris's current whereabouts, which suggests Capcom is saving that storyline for later. Another character fans are hoping to see again is Ada Wong. Believe it or not, we haven't seen Ada since Resident Evil 4. Some insiders have even claimed that Ada was originally planned to appear in Resident Evil 7, but Capcom eventually changed their plans during development. So the Resident Evil 9 DLC could potentially bring Ada back into the story and reconnect several of the franchise's most important characters. Now let's move on to the next big project, the next Resident Evil remake. After the massive success of Resident Evil 4 Remake, Capcom confirmed that they plan to continue remaking classic Resident Evil games. And according to insider Dusk Golem, the next remake in development is Resident Evil Code Veronica. Code Veronica is one of the most beloved games in the series, and many fans believe it deserves a full remake more than any other title. The game originally released in 2000, and while it was revolutionary at the time, it definitely shows its age today. The remake is reportedly scheduled for release in 2027. This will be a complete modern remake featuring updated graphics, new gameplay mechanics, and possibly even a cooperative mode. Many fans consider Code Veronica to be the true sequel to Resident Evil 2, since it continues Claire Redfield's story and expands on the conflict with the Umbrella Corporation. Interestingly, insider reports suggest that development on the Code Veronica remake is actually going very smoothly. Dusk Golem even stated that the game is ahead of schedule thanks to a strong and efficient development cycle at Capcom. If that's true, we could potentially see the official announcement sometime this year with a full release planned for 2027. That would also mean Capcom is aiming to release a Resident Evil title almost every year, which claims that the Resident Evil Code Veronica remake is being led by the same team behind the Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4 remakes. According to well-known insider Dusk Golem, the remake is being directed by Kazunori Kadoi and Yasuhiro Anpo. These are the same directors who worked on Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 4 Remake. This means the game is likely in very experienced hands. These developers understand what made the original games great, and more importantly, they know how to modernize them without losing their identity. So yeah, if everything goes right, this could easily become one of the best remakes in the entire franchise. But after Code Veronica Remake, the next project on Capcom's list appears to be Resident Evil 0 Remake. Resident Evil 0 tells the origin story of the entire franchise. It shows the events that took place right before the original Resident Evil game, focusing on Rebecca Chambers and Billy Cohen as they uncover the early secrets of the T-Virus. However, remaking Resident Evil 0 will likely be a very challenging task for Capcom. The original game was designed with hardware limitations from the early 2000s, which means the remake would need to rebuild many aspects of the game from the ground up. That includes redesigning the environments, modernizing the gameplay, and potentially adding new camera perspectives. Capcom could even include both third-person gameplay like Resident Evil 4 Remake and first-person gameplay similar to Resident Evil Village. If done correctly, Resident Evil 0 Remake could become one of the most interesting entries in the franchise, especially since it explores the earliest parts of the story. But Capcom isn't stopping there. According to insider reports, the company is also exploring the possibility of another remake of the original Resident Evil. While Resident Evil 1 did receive a remake back in 2002, that version was still limited by the technology of its time. A modern remake using the RE engine could completely reinvent the original game for a new generation of players. And finally, let's talk about the future of the mainline series, Resident Evil 10. Resident Evil 10 is reportedly planned for release around 2030. However, the direction of the story will heavily depend on the events of the Resident Evil 9 DLC. The expansion is expected to reveal several key elements that will directly connect to Resident Evil 10. That includes the identity of the next major villain and possibly the explanation of how Victor obtained Albert Wesker's blood. So the DLC could end up setting the stage for the next big chapter in the Resident Evil universe. Overall, the future of Resident Evil looks incredibly exciting. With multiple remakes, story expansions, and a brand new mainline entry on the horizon, Capcom clearly has a long-term plan for the franchise. But now I want to hear your thoughts. Which upcoming Resident Evil project are you most excited about? The Resident Evil 9 DLC, Code Veronica Remake, or Resident Evil 5 Remake? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more Resident Evil news, updates, and breakdowns. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.